If you've been holding back because you never studied it, right? Here's how to begin. So start small. One article, one conversation, one step of just faith, a faith action. Um, Number two, think about learning in public. Share your curiosity. People will rally behind you. They'll rally behind your. Welcome back to the Calling Code with Mina Salib, a place where we speak to and learn from people who are driven by excellence and led by faith. Today, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be on my own today, but we will be coming back with our guest content next week. Today, we're going to do something little special. I think trying to get a little bit more used to just one-on-one type of content. I think there will be obviously some weeks that guests will be busy. Things might happen. So I want to still make sure we have a cadence where we're still engaging and speaking with one another. So I thought a little bit about what I would love to kind of talk about and really explore a little bit of my own experience and how this idea of curiosity really unlocking different doors for me in my career. If I was interested in something that I kind of didn't study or really had no business exploring, still really try to tap in and learn about that industry. So I guess I'll start off by, just quickly asking, have you ever felt pulled towards kind of a different opportunity, but stopped yourself with the thought, I never really studied that. I'm not really qualified. Personally, again, I've definitely been there. But for me, the honest truth is most of the opportunities in my life didn't come from what I studied in school. They came from following my curiosity, pursuing what I thought was my purpose or my calling at the time, and trusting that God would open up the right doors to enable me to kind of excel in whatever that might look like. The same really happened for others. Some of the best doctors I know are actually some of the best business people I know. Some of the best finance people I know actually oftentimes become potential counselors and lawyers, and they excel in that. They didn't necessarily limit themselves to just one occupation, given that they studied that in college, university, and because they didn't limit themselves to one path, their conviction and their curiosity guided them into what they found, potentially even more success in. So today I want to share a few moments from my journey, times when I wasn't necessarily qualified on paper, but I stepped forward. I really put myself out there, and I just was okay just not knowing everything. Didn't necessarily need to know that I had all the knowledge, but I was willing to learn about these new industries. And times when faith gave me courage and curiosity to kind of keep moving forward, and the purpose that I believe that God has for me is the thing that essentially allowed me to keep driving forward, even when it was really hard. So I guess the first story I want to share is when I started my first company. It's called Aspire in 2014. Weird spelling, USSPIRE. And the goal was you inspire all of us to cover stories of people that at that time, millennials were the ones starting all of these companies before Gen Z. And it was really like those new millennials that were starting these companies and uncovering why they wanted to build these companies and what inspired them to start businesses at such a young age. There wasn't really a university course on building a team, pitching investors, carrying a vision forward. And there wasn't necessarily a lot of content. There were some, Founder Magazine and Entrepreneur Mag that were covering kind of like the Richard Branson, Mark Cubans of the world at the time. But there wasn't, I think, content that was really delivering insight looks into the day-to-day kind of like struggles that it took to really become a real founder. But for me, I wanted to uncover that. I wanted to unpack it really for myself and then share it with other people. I had the curiosity of wanting to understand why startups worked, why they didn't work, how communities formed, how ideas became kind of movements, and how companies like Uber and Google became the next big thing. So I showed up, I went to events, I asked questions, I met founders, and I just interviewed them. I asked to interview them for this website that I wanted to start. So, like any first venture, Spire wasn't perfect, but it gave me a foundation, and it taught me what it's like to start something from scratch. And that you don't necessarily need a degree in entrepreneurship to be an entrepreneur. You can be an entrepreneur in your career, in your field, at work, in your church, whatever it might be. You can be an entrepreneur wherever. And what you need is really the hunger and the humility and the faith to kind of like step forward and just try. I think that was a really cool initiative. Kind of we grew out, a pretty decent readership base at the time in 2014, and then that actually launched me into building out my network, meeting more and more people, and then ultimately landing at something called the Future Labs in New York that was run by that's still actually operating and run by NYU. A really amazing tech program. And through my work at the Future Labs, I got really interested in AI. And I never studied AI. I had no machine learning credentials, but I was fascinated and I trusted that God placed me in this field, placed this field in front of me for a reason, to kind of get this knowledge of this new technology that obviously, as we know, this was back in 2017, actually 2015 at the time, where we first started really hearing about the first couple of big AI startups. And by 2017 it got really big. So getting a chance to experience that technology early on allowed me to kind of understand how it might shape the future, how it might shape jobs, and how to potentially prepare myself and potentially other people at the time. So I learned, again, leaned in, asked questions, surrounded myself with the right people, surrounded myself with obviously all these really cool startup founders that I got to learn from and see how they were implementing AI in their own businesses, and see where I can contribute, right? Building relationships, connections for the founders, connecting them with investors and things like that. So ultimately, my work in the field of AI actually allowed me to start a podcast, an AI podcast at the time called AI in the Wild, no longer operating, but it was cool. I did I think 13 episodes or something like that, and it was actually really fun to see how AI was transforming the workplace even before ChatGPT and all of these new models that we're all kind of using now. So that was really exciting, and I think ultimately showed me okay, you don't necessarily need to be technical to understand deep technologies and how you can actually leverage them and use them in your own businesses, and allowed me to kind of take that into the next stage of my career. Ended up even getting into trucking at some point. Went from kind of incubator accelerators and VC world to landed in trucking around times of COVID, and building a trucking business with a really, really cool team. I didn't know anything about logistics. I didn't know anything about freight, but it's just about jumping in and, learning about what the challenge is and what it requires to win in this field. And again, just immersing yourself in hours and hours of just research and conversation and study, and connecting yourself with a network of people that also care about this field. So you can learn through those conversations. Obviously, reading and researching and listening to podcasts about the field. All of this stuff allows you to kind of learn about what you're interested in, what you're curious about, and these big kind of opportunities that you want to solve. So again, it wasn't necessarily about the trucking in of itself. It was about solving a problem that empowering drivers, rebalancing, this distribution network and supply chain network, and kind of building systems for both carriers and drivers and things like that. So I was more interested in the problem we were trying to solve as opposed to, just like this specific industry. Oftentimes it really is about the opportunity or the problem that you're trying to solve, as opposed to just, like you really have to care so much about trucking of itself. No, I just really cared about solving the issue of the driver. How do I make their lives more efficient? How do I make their lives easier? Okay, so there we can build systems to do that. And then fast forward to about a year after that, got into NFTs. I was just mind blown about this explosion of blockchain and what are these things called NFTs and how do I get myself into it, and what are these monkeys that are being sold and these cards, the Top Shot cards that are being sold. I didn't understand anything about it. I was just like, all right, I really want to learn. Let me just learn. And I did that, and I kind of learned in public, especially with NFTs. I thought the easiest way would be to I thought it was a really cool opportunity for people. I think obviously it was a bubble, but it was a cool opportunity given we were in COVID. People were sitting at home. They had time. Um, and it was a cool way for me to share what I was learning with other people. So I was learning in public, like I was sharing what I was learning. What is a wallet? How do you actually make an NFT? How do you download a wallet? How do you buy an NFT? And I just thought that was a cool way to become part of a community at that time, especially because we're all locked in our homes and kind of just scared at that time. So I thought being connected to something, and then also obviously there was like a lot of just monetary opportunities at that time that were open in this industry that I didn't necessarily know about, but I was learning about. So learning along the way is also cool because it kind of holds you accountable to other people, right? Like you don't want to share information that puts other people, that hurts other people. You want to be sharing information that you're okay with, that you're comfortable sharing because it could potentially help people if they do their own research and go and use that information to kind of make opportunity for themselves. So I thought it was interesting because we were using this thing called the blockchain. Obviously, now the blockchain has become much more mainstream. But earlier on, it was, what is this technology? How does it work? Why is it different than traditional finance? But being able to kind of learn that stuff, and then how NFTs are incorporated on the blockchain, and why are they important, and what's digital identity, and how does that work into my life? Um, and that really that experience was super unique because it was a rush. It was fun, but it really opened up a lot of doors to great friendships, great communities, and ultimately it came with a lot of learning, some struggle, but a really cool, I think, experience, which is unlike anything I've ever kind of experienced, especially professionally. Ultimately, getting me to the point where I am now, where I got, because I was so invested in Web3 and blockchain, I got an opportunity to head up a Web3 community for a space company, which I work for now, Axiom Space. So I essentially help pioneer, this community that cares about space and cares about blockchain, kind of putting those two things together, and essentially expanding my scope and my opportunities because I was just kind of interested. And also, I got that opportunity because I was sharing publicly, right? So a lot of people are really scared to share publicly. I get it. You don't want people to really necessarily know everything you're doing or whatever. But honestly, I share publicly because I do think if you believe in your purpose and you're convicted by it, and you think it's given to you and put in your heart by God, it's okay. Like I think it's fine. I think if you're doing it with the right intention of, man, maybe this is going to help someone, maybe it's going to inspire someone to think outside the box or try something or just learn something new, I think it's fine. And I think it also offers you opportunities that you don't even know exist. So, before I got into space, I didn't even know space was an active thing. Like I, I got an opportunity because I cared about blockchain, and because I cared about blockchain, I was able to kind of delve into space, and now I absolutely love this industry, commercial space industry, and what I think it is able to do, kind of for humanity, not necessarily just to get to Mars, but the idea of being able to advance modern medicine because we're doing more things in space, and just understanding the universe God created better. It's pretty amazing. So all those things are not necessarily possible if you're just not curious, and you're not kind of vulnerable, and you're not open to being, I guess, transparent. So ultimately, every experience built on the one before it, one act of kind of curiosity gave me the credibility, the relationships, and the perspective for the next one. And I just believe that God was weaving those steps together. Um, Ultimately, we live in a world where you can learn and become proficient in almost anything if you're curious and really committed to excellence, and just led by faith, hopefully. Um, and so for me, what I've learned is opportunities open when you are curious, but they really endure when you pursue them with a faithful heart. Right? So opportunities open when you're curious, um, and I will add, when you're committed. You can't just be curious and be like, oh, that was cool, and then the next day you're not curious anymore. It takes hours of work. It takes hours of work and effort and care and learning and diligence and going to things when you don't want to. And I always said, like, I used to go to a lot of events because ultimately you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know who you're going to be able to help, and you don't know who's going to be able to help you. So being at those events, kind of like, I felt like responsible to be there, because I felt like I was wasting an opportunity that God gave me if I wasn't. So I think it's also ultimately the curiosity and the commitment that leads you to, you know, whatever success might mean in that moment, in what God's establishing for you, um, and ultimately curiosity is really the spark. Um, it's the thing that gets you started, but it's the commitment, the discipline, and the dedication that really keeps you going. You can study forever and never really feel ready, right? Um, some of the most well-versed people are not necessarily the most successful, right? Some of the most studied people are not necessarily the most successful because it's hard for them to put themselves out there. So if you're a person that is able to kind of put themselves out there, and you're able to actually learn on the fly and be vulnerable enough to put yourself out there, to put yourself in a situation or an industry that you might not necessarily understand, I think there is a lot of opportunity out there. And I think in the world that we're continuing to live in, uh, you're going to need to be more bold, to really attain the level of success that I think God wants for all of us. So I think, just to wrap it up, practical takeaways. If you've been holding back because you never studied it, right? Here's how to begin. So start small. One article, one conversation, one step of just faith, a faith action. Um, Number two, think about learning in public. Share your curiosity. People will rally behind you. They'll rally behind your authenticity, um, especially if you're humble about it, right? Like, if you're just coming like, hey, like, you're really good at this, I'm really not, I'd love to learn. Um, be open to putting yourself out there. Three, leverage what you already know, skills that you might already have, skills of storytelling, skills of leadership. Whatever you can bring to the table is very helpful. Whatever you can offer, whatever you can volunteer will be helpful in enabling people to want to help you. Be patient. It takes time. You're not going to be an overnight success. Even the overnight successes are not. They've been working at it for 10, 20 years. You just see the final thing on Instagram and everybody gets excited, but it takes time. Growth is, it's a step-by-step process. Follow your mission. Follow your mission, not your major. Sometimes you study something, it's not necessarily your calling. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. Again, I see some of the best doctors end up being amazing business people, right? They're still doctors, but they also took the time to learn about business and they've established themselves and they're able to then use that to advance their careers even further, right? So just because you got your degree in something doesn't stop you from learning something else. And then my challenge to you would be think about that thing you really been drawn to, a bold idea, industry, and something that you're truly excited about that you've been really putting off. Stop asking yourself if you're qualified. Start asking if you're curious enough. Think about if you're going to be committed enough and faithful enough to actually learn what you need to learn. Because the truth is, you don't need to be taught to actually start. You just need to begin to be taught. So take the step, let curiosity lead, let faith be your anchor, and let be excellence be what you give to the world. With that, I want to thank you for joining the Calling Code. I know this was a little different. It was definitely a little different for me. I really appreciate you joining, being here. And next week we'll be back with our normal schedule programming. We'll have a guest on. So thanks. Bye.